6 a.m. on a Tuesday. You're 58 years old. You're standing in your kitchen, in the same spot you've stood in for 30 years, pouring the same cup of coffee from the same machine your wife bought you for Christmas in 2014. And for the first time in your entire working life, a thought walks into your head uninvited. What if I just stopped next week? Not retired, not transitioned, just stopped, didn't drive in, didn't log on, didn't answer the email. You stand there with the coffee getting cold in your hand, and you wait for the answer to come. Because you've always been the kind of man who has answers. 30 years of answers. Mortgage answers. College tuition answers. Promotion answers. Layoff survival answers. But this morning, the answer doesn't come. And in the silence where the answer should be, you finally hear it. The thing nobody warned you about. The thing your financial advisor never mentioned. The thing your father never had to face because in 1972 he had a different problem. You can't stop. Not because you don't want to, because you literally can't. The two of you built a life that requires both of you to keep showing up every single morning until one of you breaks first. That's the two-income trap. And the worst part isn't the math. The worst part is the morning you realize you're inside it, and the door closed 20 years ago. Stay with me for the next 15 minutes. Because there are 3 things happening to your brain right now that no one in finance is willing to name. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which one is running your life, and the first conversation that starts to break it open. Most people, when they hear the two-income trap, think it's a slogan. It's not. It's a real, documented economic pattern, named by a Harvard bankruptcy researcher named Elizabeth Warren back in 2003, in a book she wrote with her daughter. She studied 2,000 families who'd filed for bankruptcy, and what she found broke the entire American story about money. The families going broke weren't the ones with 1 paycheck. They were the ones with 2. Dual-income households, college-educated, hardworking, the exact families America told you to become. And they were filing for bankruptcy at higher rates than their parents had a generation earlier, the parents who only had 1 income coming in. How is that possible? Here's the part the spreadsheets never quite explain. When both spouses started working, the family's income went up. But the family's fixed costs went up faster. The mortgage, the second car, the childcare, the taxes on that second income, stacked on top of the first one and taxed at the highest bracket from the very first dollar. The exhaustion expenses, the takeout, the dry cleaner, the housekeeper, the $9 coffee on the way to a job you can't afford to leave. By the time you finished paying for the privilege of having 2 paychecks, the second one wasn't really a second one. Some weeks after taxes and childcare and the second car payment, that second job was paying you about $3.50 an hour to leave your house. But the family kept going. Because what choice did you have? The mortgage was already approved at 2 incomes. The school district was already chosen at 2 incomes. The house was already bought at 2 incomes. The whole life was priced at 2 incomes. That's the original trap. It's the one Bobby's video walks through. It's the one Warren wrote about. And it's the reason today, as we sit here in 2026, somewhere around 4 out of every 10 American adults can't cover a $400 emergency without borrowing money, even ones with 6-figure household incomes. That's the trap. Everybody knows the trap. But almost nobody talks about what happens to that trap when you turn 55. Here's what they don't tell you. The two-income trap doesn't end when the kids leave for college. It doesn't end when the mortgage gets close to paid. It doesn't end when you should finally have breathing room. It evolves. Because for 30 years, you weren't just earning 2 paychecks. You were becoming 2 paychecks. The job became your schedule. The schedule became your routine. The routine became your identity. And after 30 years of doing it, you and your spouse don't have a marriage anymore. You have a logistics company. Think about it. When was the last time you and your spouse had a real conversation that wasn't about a calendar? Pickups, drop-offs, who's getting the dry cleaning, who's calling the plumber, who's flying to Phoenix on Thursday for the meeting, who's covering Christmas at her sister's, who's taking your mother to the doctor. You're not married to a person anymore. You're married to a schedule. And the schedule is the only thing that's been holding the marriage together for the last 15 years, even if neither one of you is brave enough to say that out loud. Here's what really gets me about this part. When one spouse finally tries to retire, usually around 62 or 63, the other one panics. Not because of money, Because the script breaks. The job that gave them their identity is suddenly gone. The role they played in the household is suddenly empty. The reason they got out of bed at 5:30 for 30 years is suddenly negotiable. And nobody in your life has the language to tell you what's actually happening. Your friends say you'll figure it out. Your kids say you've earned it. Your advisor shows you a spreadsheet. But you stand in the kitchen at 6 a.m. with cold coffee. And the trap got tighter. It got quieter. And it followed you all the way here. So now let me show you the 3 specific things happening inside your head right now. The 3 things that keep couples over 50 locked inside this trap. Even when every spreadsheet on earth says they should be free. They hit in a specific order. And the third one is the one that breaks people. Pattern 1. The ratchet only turns one way. You've heard the phrase lifestyle creep. Every finance channel says it. You spend a little more every time you earn a little more, and over 30 years it adds up. Fine. Old news. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the ratchet. A ratchet only turns one direction. You can click it up. You can't click it down. And after 50, the teeth get sharper. Here's what that looks like in real life. Your kids are gone. The 4-bedroom house has 2 empty bedrooms upstairs that nobody's slept in for 6 years. That selling that house and moving into something smaller would change your retirement math overnight. You've done the calculation on a napkin at the kitchen table. $1,500 a month, easy. Maybe more. But you don't do it. And it's not because of the contract. The mortgage can be paid off. The realtor's fee is small. The logistics are solvable. You don't do it because of what your neighbor will think. You've lived on this street for 22 years. You've seen other couples sell and move to a townhouse, and you've watched everyone whisper about it. I think they had to sell. I heard he got laid off. I think they're having trouble. You watched it happen to the Hendersons in 2019, and you swore quietly to yourself in the same kitchen that it would never happen to you. So every month you spend $1,800 to heat rooms that nobody sleeps in. $1,800 to perform the role of the family that's still doing fine. $1,800 times 12 months times 10 years is $216,000. Paid not to a bank, not to a contractor, not to the IRS. Paid to an imaginary audience of people who, by the way, are too busy with their own quiet financial panic to actually be watching you. Downsizing isn't a financial decision after 50. It's a public confession. And most couples would rather go broke quietly than look broke loudly. That's pattern number 1. And if you just felt something tighten in your chest reading that, the next 2 are going to be worse. Pattern 2. The Tuesday your brain flips. Somewhere between 55 and 58, your brain does something it has never done before. You don't notice it the day it happens. There's no headline, no alert, no fanfare. It's a Tuesday. You're at your desk. You open a retirement statement. You look at the number. And for the first time, your brain doesn't read that number as a spreadsheet. It reads it as a countdown. Up until that Tuesday, retirement was an abstract noun. A goal. A finish line on a page. You could think about it the way you'd think about a vacation that's still 9 months out, present but not pressing. After that Tuesday, retirement is a date. A specific Friday. A specific number of paychecks remaining. A specific number of mornings standing in this same kitchen pouring this same coffee. And here's the brutal part. The moment your brain switches from planning to bracing, every financial decision you make starts to get worse. You pull out of the stock market because you can't afford another 2008. You overload on bonds at the exact moment in your life when you need growth the most. Or you flip the other direction, you tell yourself you've earned it, and you buy the new SUV at 61 with money you don't have, because the part of your brain that planned for tomorrow has officially gone offline. This isn't a character flaw. It's not because you got lazy or dumb at 55 after being sharp for 30 years. It's because your brain is wired to handle distant threats and immediate threats completely differently. When retirement was 20 years away, it was a distant threat. Your prefrontal cortex handled it like an adult. When retirement is 5 years away, it becomes an immediate threat. And immediate threats get handled by an older, dumber part of your brain. The same part that makes you slam on the brakes for a plastic bag in the road. That's why smart people make stupid money decisions in their late 50s. Not because they got worse. Because the runway got shorter, and the brain doesn't run the same way at 5,000 feet that it ran at 50,000. Pattern 3. You're loyal to a story that's expensive. This is the one that breaks people. So before I say it, I want you to take a breath. Because if it lands hard. Here it is. The reason you haven't restructured your spending at 60 isn't that you don't know how. You absolutely know how. You could write the plan on a napkin in 12 minutes. Sell the house. Drop the second car. Cancel the country club. Move closer to the grandkids. Eat in. You know all of it. You don't do it because doing it would mean admitting the last 30 years were wrong. If the smart move at 60 is to live on half the income, then the question your brain has to answer is, why didn't we live on half the income at 40? And the answer to that question is unbearable. Because the answer is we could have. We just didn't. So your brain protects the story. It defends the choice. It tells you that selling the house would devastate your wife. That moving would hurt the kids. That you've earned this. That it's too late to start over. That you're being practical, not stuck. But here's the truth. Sitting in the kitchen at 6 a.m. You're not bad with money. You're loyal to a story. And the story is expensive. This is why couples sit in their advisor's office, listen to a perfectly reasonable plan, nod, write nothing down, drive home in silence, and then do nothing at all for 6 months. It isn't the money. It isn't the math. It's that the plan, if executed, would be a tombstone for the version of themselves they've been protecting since 1995. Most people, given the choice between staying wrong for the next 20 years and being right for the last 10, will choose to stay wrong. Not because they're cowards. Because 30 years of identity is heavier than 10 years of freedom. That's the third pattern. That's the one that decides whether the rest of your life is something you live or something you survive. And now I'm going to tell you what to actually do about it. Because none of this matters if you walk away from this video and go back to standing in the kitchen at 6 a.m. Here's the part where every other finance channel hands you a worksheet. I'm not going to do that. Not yet. Because if you start with the worksheet, you'll do exactly what every other couple does. Execute a perfect financial plan for a life you don't actually want. The fix runs in the opposite order from what your advisor will tell you. 3 steps. 1 conversation. Roughly 20 minutes. Step 1. Name the trap out loud with your spouse in the room. Not in your head. Not on a forum. Not to your buddy on the golf course. With your spouse. In the same room. Out loud. Sit at the kitchen table. Pick a Tuesday, there's a reason it has to be a Tuesday, and say 1 sentence. I think we're inside something we never named, and I think we've both been pretending we're not. Then stop talking. Let it sit. Don't rush to fix it. Don't bring out a spreadsheet. Don't apologize. Don't blame. Just name it. There is a conversation you and your spouse have been avoiding for 7 years. You both know what it's about. And every year you avoid it costs you more than any tax bracket ever did. If you want a script that doesn't require either of you to take the blame first, try this exact phrasing. 3 sentences. Can we talk about what we both think is true but haven't said? I'm not asking you to agree with me. I'm asking you to stop pretending with me. That's it. That's step 1. You'd be amazed how many marriages survive this conversation, and how many were quietly dying without it. Step 2. Separate your identity from your schedule. Take a piece of paper. At the top, write 1 question. Who am I if I'm not the person who gets up at 5:30? Don't answer it tonight. Carry that paper with you for a week. Let your brain bump into it during the day. While you're driving. While you're brushing your teeth. While you're standing in the kitchen at 6 a.m. Most couples who get stuck at 60 are stuck not because they don't have a financial plan. They're stuck because they don't have a post-paycheck identity. The job didn't just give them income. It gave them a reason to stand up. Take the income away and the reason goes with it unless you build a new one first. This is also where the marriage piece reattaches. Because once you each have a post-paycheck identity sketched on paper, you stop needing the schedule to hold you together. You can actually look at each other again. You can plan a Tuesday morning that isn't about getting somewhere. Step 3, then and only then go see the advisor. Now the spreadsheet works. Now the worksheet matters. Now downsizing isn't a confession, because you've already had the harder conversation. Now adjusting the withdrawal rate is just math, because the identity question is already off the table. This is the order that 99% of finance channels reverse. They send you to the advisor first, hand you a plan, and wonder why you don't execute it. You don't execute it because the plan is asking you to give up something. Your story, your identity, your house, your role. And you haven't done the work that makes giving it up survivable. Money advice works, but only after the identity conversation. Run it in the wrong order and you'll spend the next 10 years drafting beautiful spreadsheets for a life you can't actually live. I want you to go back to the kitchen. It's 6 a.m. on Tuesday. You're standing in the same spot. The coffee is in the same cup. The thought walks back in. What if I just stopped next week? But this time the answer comes. Not because the math changed. Not because you got a raise or a windfall or a miracle. The answer comes because you finally said the sentence out loud. To your wife, to yourself, to the version of you that's been carrying this for 7 years in silence. The two-income trap isn't your fault. It's a system that was built to absorb every dollar two people could earn, and then quietly build your identity for the difference. You were doing exactly what you were supposed to do. The problem was never you. But you're not out of time. You're out of excuses. And honestly, that's a much better place to be. If this is the first time anyone's named this for you, hit subscribe. Everything on Safe After 50 is about protecting what you spent 30 years building. Your money, your retirement, and the relationship that's supposed to walk through the door of retirement with you. The next video on this channel breaks down the 3 Social Security changes hitting in 2026 that are about to make this trap tighter for couples over 60. Watch it next. Don't wait until Tuesday, because there's still a door. It's just not the one the money guys keep showing you. I'll see you in the next one.